So I want to make some random remarks about what's going on in various places in the world, here in the United States, the Western world. And I will try to be careful to tell you when I'm expressing my own views and when I'm expressing the views of those who I think are authorities, like my Rabbi Zatzal. The facts are on the table. There's no question that this is a gigantic crisis. Many on the left in Israel have publicly come out and said that their dream is finished, that they had a very naive and deeply wrong picture of how the world works, how people work, how our enemies work, what their psychology is and what their culture is. I would say it's endemic to the left across the world, and they're very bitterly disappointed with the left with whom they identified worldwide, as are progressives in America. The Jewish progressives in America, many of them are disillusioned. As one person in the world's limelight said, sometimes two wrongs don't make a right isn't the correct rule to use. Just because they slaughtered your people doesn't mean you have to slaughter them. Yeah, it might mean you have to slaughter them. It's not two wrongs. It's the only way to write it. The question is, what should we, as believing and practicing Jews, pray for, hope for? I think there's a natural spirit that our side should win, that they are evil and that they have to be destroyed. Of the total picture, that's probably 10%. I don't say it's not correct, but it's 10%. And without the 90%, even that correct 10% could be incorrect. What's really at stake here? So I saw some writings of Rav Shach, after the Yom Kippur War. He said about the Yom Kippur War itself, but I would put into it this perspective of the 67 War. The 67 War is identified in military history as maybe the most spectacular victory in the entire 20th century. 6-Day War. 6 years later, those utterly defeated Arab armies mounted a counterattack. There was a line of guns at the Suez Canal, the Bar-Lev line. No one can cross that line. Really, no one. That's like the Maginot line in France. But here they crossed it on top of it. Smashed it. They conquered the whole of the Golan. They were ready to come in to attack Tzfaz. So they had a problem in information. They didn't come in. By the 24 hours later, when they got the information, the IDF was really there to oppose them. Something like 2,500 soldiers were killed in a couple of weeks. A gigantic, gigantic failure of information, the whole thing. Now, let's see. I lived through that period of time. In 67, you have the most spectacular success in the 20th century, and 6 years later, you have a spectacular failure and loss. Could you ask yourself, how could that happen? How could that happen? Would you have expected at the end of the Second World War for Armenia to declare war on the United States and fight serious battles? I mean, what's going on? You don't see that it wasn't you? You don't see that it isn't your strength that accomplished the success in the 6-Day War? You don't question your ideology? What's motivating you? Your grasp of the world? The test was to see whether kochi ve'otziv yadi asali esachayil hazeh, that the strength of my hand provided me with this victory. The test was to see whether you can get past that, get beyond that, and see that you're dependent on a higher power. But as Rav Shach testifies, the attitude of those who were leading the state was, we failed, and now we'll succeed. We'll be smarter, we'll be tougher, we'll be stronger, and we'll succeed. Which means that the spiritual lesson was not learned. It was not learned. And I think we are in a situation where we're in the same danger. I haven't heard from any of the secular leaders of the country a word about there being other powers that function to determine what events are. Several weeks before this took place, before October 7th, it's the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. So there were interviews with people in the military. Could it happen again? And the unanimous voice was, of course it can't happen again. We have the wall. We have the technology. We have the information services. We know their psychology. We're on top of it. We have it under control. Spectacular failure. Unbelievable, unimaginable failure. Unimaginable tragedies. I don't hear from any of the leaders of the country a word about maybe it isn't really you who are in control. Maybe it's not really you that are making the events take place. No, we're going to be stronger and smarter and faster and deeper. We'll take care of it. So I think that there is a gigantic spiritual challenge and it's not being met. So one thing that we ought to be davening for is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should influence those who are in charge on the secular side to think again, to arrange for them, other than through the gigantic slaughter, but other ways to cause them to doubt their own certainty of their ideology and to open their minds to a different perspective. Part of that is davening for a victory on the battlefield that will be a sanctification of the divine name. Not only a victory that will kill all the Hamasniks, not only a victory that will de-radicalize Gaza, not only a victory that will leave us safe and protected, but a victory that will sanctify HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. If we don't have that as our central vision, as our central petition, then we're missing the boat. Yes, Jewish lives are in danger, and yes, we would always pray for the salvation of Jewish lives. That has nothing to do with their ideology, what they know and what they don't know, what they believe and what they don't believe. Jews are in danger. We pray that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should save them. But here, there's a whole government and nationality that's at stake. And the leaders and those who have been committed to the wrong point of view aren't yet showing signs that they're reconsidering their position. The leftists, yes, the serious leftists are realizing that their view of the world, their view of a place in the Middle East, the view of the Muslims who are in Gaza and in the West Bank, their view of that has been shaken. No longer do they think you can buy people off with money and kindness and jobs. And this goes on over and over again. I don't know if you ever heard of a guy named Kissinger, who was the Secretary of State in the United States, Jewish fellow, and the lefty idea of détente. Détente was, if we create enough business opportunities for the Soviet Union and we engage them into relations with us where there'll be a tremendous loss to them if they cause us to withdraw, then they'll be incentivized economically and socially to become fair partners in a fairer world. That isn't what brought communism down. What brought communism down was Reagan's evil empire. You're evil, and we will oppose you and work to weaken you and to destroy you and to break you. So this lesson they're learning. But that's a lesson from one secular political position to a different secular political position. This has happened to us so many times in our history. So the goal that we have to hope for, what to daven for, is that Kadosh Baruch Hu will enable us to see in what happens that it's His hand that is managing the events. That will be the real salvation for the Jewish people here and elsewhere. What's happening in the United States, on the campuses and elsewhere, I have my own. What I said up until now is from what I learned from my Rebbe Zatzal and what I understand of where the Torah stands. I think that that's authoritative. I forgot to bring it in tonight. There's a Mishnah Berach for the soldiers of the IDF, which is in a Sephardi Siddur called Heichal Dovid. Rebbetzin found it. It's absolutely beautiful. It prays that they should be safe and the Kodesh Baruch Hu should make them successful, and that they should do tshuva. Right? Because we're interested in their spiritual health also. Also, we're interested in their spiritual health and their physical health also. And without a tefillah that they should do tshuva, the hope that they will be victorious in the battlefield may be the worst possible thing for them. It does reinforce the same illusion which brought us to the same tragedy twice. We have to keep that uppermost in our minds. And I speak as one who, I've been here 42 years, and before that I was here for a year in 64, and a year and half a year in 77. And I love the country, and I believe in the country, I believe in the people in the country. But believing in people and loving them involves having a vision for them for their own best good. And that vision has to be uppermost in our minds. That's what we have to be thinking about, caring about, and hoping for. I taught university for 10 years at Johns Hopkins in the 70s. So I know a little bit about university life. It's certainly changed in certain ways, but I have an extremely cynical view of the character, the morality, the sincerity, the honesty, the self-understanding and world understanding of those students who are talking about from the sea to sea, from the river to the sea, the land of Palestine shall be free. I also, when I was an undergraduate, was co-opted by the left. I also went on peace marches and so on and so on. One of the things we were taught is that this was popular in the 70s. This goes back and forth every 10 or 15 years, nature and nurture. So in that period, it was popular to say that everything is nurture, nature is nothing, your social programming will determine how you turn out, and there's nothing inherent in one group or another group. I began to become interested in Yiddishkeit. The person who is now the Boston Rabbi of Yerushalayim, I guess he's probably 8 years younger than I am. I was close to his father. He was my Rebbe. So I was there often for Shabbos. And I was talking about this. So I don't know, I was probably 21. So he was 13. He said, really? You know inherent differences between people? How do you know that? How do I know that? How do I know that? I don't know how I know it. Professors were feeding it to us, both in the classroom and on the marches. But how do I know that? Why? Just because if a person is born in Ohio and is brought up in Beijing, he'll speak Chinese. Therefore, there are no differences inherently between people. How do I know that? So I went back to the university, and I started looking, and I saw that every 15 years or so, there's a swift between how much is nurture and how much is nature. And in the 90s, you had the University of Iowa Twin Studies, which pinned a great deal on nature rather than nurture. It's an unsolved problem, how much is which, because we don't know how human development takes place. So then I thought to myself, they sold me an idea, And on the basis of that and other ideas they sold me, I went on marches and demonstrated. They didn't even bother to raise the question how they knew it. They didn't bother to share what little evidence they could possibly have shared. They just used their prestige and our naivete and our ignorance and our enthusiasm and our easily manipulated emotions to co-opt us into their political struggles. That was the beginning of my shift from left to right. And I believe in that silly expression that if you're not on the left at 20, you have no heart, and if you're still on the left at 30, you have no brain. But there are plenty of reasons to be on the left without a brain. Plenty. One of the strongest reasons that's motivating these students is powerlessness. They know deep down that they're nothing. They can't get a good job. They can't fly an airplane. They can't create a chemical substance or solve a disease. They can't solve a mathematical problem. They can't read a book. They can't read a book. 30 years ago, English majors were reading a Google synopsis of the book or some other synopsis and taking their exams. They weren't reading works of literature. Why read the book? They're incompetent. There's nothing they can do of any significance. Oh, but they can shut their professors up by yelling, can't they? They can yell. That makes them powerful. They can wave flags. They can intimidate people. They can force them to be so afraid they can't leave their rooms. They're powerful. This is, I'll tell you what it's like. I don't know the extent to which it happens today, but my time, all the kids that went to college started to smoke. It's cheap maturity. You really look slick because you're smoking. That doesn't mean you understand politics or psychology. It doesn't mean you can earn $2,000 over the summer, but you can smoke. So you must be really slick. Real cheap maturity. It's the same syndrome. These people have nothing. And, of course, to get something, they might have to read some books. Much better. By the way, demonstrations, I don't know what's going on today, but in our day, demonstrations were always on days that had classes. They're never on Saturdays and Sundays. Because why give up a weekend? No! Have it when a day with classes, and then you get out of classes. It's that crude. It's that superficial. It's just a hunger for power. Use my pronouns. I demand it. If not, you're a criminal. I can tell you what words you should speak to me. So you know what Jordan Peterson said? No. Why not? Why won't you do what I want you to do? It's just a question of my pronouns. His answer is, I'm a trained clinical psychologist. I've published 150 papers in the journals that you think are journals, right? Maybe it's not good for you that I should use your pronouns. Suppose you're an alcoholic and you asked me for a bottle of gin. Should I give it to you because you asked? Should I? Just because you asked? Maybe I should say no. Maybe your demand for the use of pronouns is narcissistic, and it's going to feed your psychological deficiencies. Then maybe it's wrong for me to use your pronouns. What makes you think that you, as a friend of my first wife said to when she was arguing with her teenager, at one point she said, I have been 19, but you have not been 45. So why should I think that you know better than I do? I have 19 and 45 in my history. You only have 19. So then I say, and I have this also with older people, a person says, don't talk to me about Yiddishkeit, Rabbi. I was there, been there, done that. I was in yeshiva. I left when I was 20, but I can learn about Gemara. I know it all the time. And I know that's not right, it's not true, it's not for me, it's superstition, etc., etc., etc. So I say to him, listen, you're in business, right? I have a cousin who's studying economics. He's a junior in college. Maybe you want to ask him some questions about economics, your business. Maybe he can give you some advice, to help you run your business. So the guy who's 45 says, come on, he's 19. What are you talking about? 20 years old. He's a junior in college. I have a college degree and an MA, and I've been in business for 20 years. Why should I ask him? And I say to him, you're right. And guess what? You're living your defection from Yiddishkeit on the basis of your 20-year-old decision, which you haven't reconsidered in 25 years. Your 20-year-old or younger self is dictating to you at 45 how you should think about Yiddishkeit. Why are you living in terms of your 20-year-old decision? Don't you know that there are Fruma Yidden who are college professors? Don't you know there are Fruma Yidden who are mathematicians and scientists and all the rest? They know everything you know and more. Are you just afraid? Okay, but let's get back to work. So these people are powerless. That's the first thing. Second of all, one of the most energizing and joy-producing emotions is righteous indignation. I'm right, you're wrong, and you're evil. And you have to be evil. Because the more evil you are, the more joy I get in opposing you. And the stronger I oppose you, the more I self-affirm. Free Palestine has nothing to do with Palestine. Free Palestine is waving a flag to destroy Western culture. You have this narrative that I've even seen it said, Western culture is the worst civilization in the history of the world. No less. The worst civilization in the history of the world. That's really breathtaking in hyperbole, So I get affirmed because I'm opposing absolute evil, and the more I oppose it, the more evil it is, the more I'm affirmed. So it's again an appeal to powerlessness, a sense of meaninglessness, insignificance. What are you doing after all? Jordan Peterson says a lot of right things. He said to someone once about climate, drop everything and solve the climate problem. He says, clean your own room. Your relationship with your family is perfect. There's stresses and so on and so on. Why don't you see if you can fix that before you try and fix the planet? It ought to be easier to make up with your parents than to fix the economies and politics and cultures of the whole world. Let's see how good you are at cleaning your own room. And after that, maybe you could talk about the rooms on your block. And after that, maybe you can talk about making some progress in your town to make people's lives better. Before you take on something that's as global as that, requiring specialized knowledge, which you don't have, and so forth and so on. So it is a cheap shot at feeling important, feeling significant, and doing something important. How many of those 100,000 in London who marched in favor of Palestine volunteered to come to Palestine to fight on behalf of Hamas? How many of them gave $10,000 to Hamas? Zero. They didn't give a nickel. They marched with flags, with all the media there, and they sing songs, they make everybody afraid of them, and they threaten to do violence to people. But to sacrifice something? To undertake danger in favor of something? It's not on the agenda. It's not on the agenda. It's not even skin deep. The whole thing is, I'm just reading now about Somalia. There's a civil war going on, and 2 million people are displaced, and there's looming famine. None of them ever heard of that. Just one injustice in the world. Just one. This one, and always this one. It's not so much, I shouldn't say it's not. Anti-Semitism is definitely there. But it's more than that. This is the one that the Western culture advocates are in favor of. They have to be against this one. If Somalia is having a problem and the Western government feel this way or that way about it, it doesn't count. It's not a symbol of tearing down the Western world. This is a symbol of tearing down the Western world. So it's not about the Palestinians. It's nothing to do with the Palestinians. We talk about about the Arab countries not taking Palestinians in. Egypt won't take one. They said over and over again, no Palestinian refugees are coming to us. Absolutely not. But what about these leftist communities? Why don't they open their doors to Palestinians? Invite them to come to them. And then, as one fellow did, I think this was very clever, there's a video of him on a college campus, pretending to ask for signatures for a petition in favor of Gaza, right? And he says to a student, will you sign up in favor of the Arabs living in Gaza? Sure, of course. Well, we have a rule that we have to tell you what's in the petition. In the petition, it is that you support the Palestinians in Gaza for whom a person who is a homosexual by law is put to death. Are you ready to sign? Really? That's what they believe? Oh, I don't think I could sign that. And he says, then the next one, LGBTQ people are considered to be sick and they have no rights and they can't advertise and so on. Sign right here. Sign right here. Oh, really? I couldn't sign that, So all of a sudden, from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free? Free of what? Women can't vote, and women can't go outside without being accompanied by someone, and so on. Sign right here. What? That's the way they treat women? So, do I really want to support that? Maybe not. Maybe not. Because why did it take this fellow to point it out for them to find out about it? This isn't exactly secret doctrine, how they live, what they live, how they live. They don't live at all the way these students in London live. This is totally deserving of disgust and defacing what's noble in the human being is his ability to think and ability to learn, ability to be self-corrective. I once asked one of these people, who's one of these radical groups, when's the last time you made a mistake? When's the last time you changed your mind? He couldn't remember. Because making a mistake and changing your mind isn't on the menu. It's not part of the experience. Perfectly certain, absolutely certain, and be willing to because then you are a hero. So, what to do? Now here, there's a lot of division of ideas, and I can't claim that I know my ideas are right. I don't have enough of a grasp, but I can tell you my intuition, given the life that I've lived and the age that I'm at, it's a delicate balancing act. You probably never heard of Abba Eban, but Abba Eban was the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, and during the 67 war, we were in America, he spoke, and he was a South African, and he knew how to speak. And he explained the Israeli position with logic, with facts, with eloquence, and we, American Jews, listening to him, were thrilled. I came to Israel right after the 67 war because a year before we had bought tickets. My wife and I had bought tickets to spend the summer here. So I was here 10 days after the war. Abba Eban was maybe the most unpopular person in the country. I couldn't understand that. Okay, a lot of them didn't speak English. Still, his rhetoric, and it was translated to Hebrew for them. Right? Why couldn't they understand it? And I got the answer. He should have walked in, pounded his fist and said, we're right and you're wrong, go to hell, and walk out. Really? That's what he should have done. Wow, you are right, they are wrong, but it's a big world out there. And if you anger the wrong people, you could make your life a lot harder. It could make things more difficult for you. So the fact that you're convinced that you're right doesn't make it smart to simply spit in everybody else's face. You want to be successful in life, you have to be smart. So it's a very delicate balance between when you stand on principle and when you give in, and how to give in, and how to convince the people to be on your side. I think the present government is struggling with that, And as I said, I'm not knowledgeable enough to know that every particular decision they make is right, but taking it into account, I think, is definitely the right thing to do. Just one detail, you know, of past prison exchanges that have taken place. There's a case where Israel released 1,000 prisoners for one Jew. One of those exchanges, this fellow Sinwar, who's the head of the Hamas, was released. He did a lot of mischief. Now, what we've been told in the press is that it's 1 for 1, and the first stage will be women and children. Women and children for women and children, 1 for 1. That's a big difference. The women and children that we're giving back presumably will not be shooting rockets at Israel. And the women and children that we will get back are the people who are non-combatants from our side. And as one of the Arab members of Knesset has said several times already, according to Islamic law, you're not allowed to take women and children as prisoners. So if we could get them back on that kind of a basis, that may very well be worth it. But it's a gigantic change that from what it was in the past. I feel terribly sorry for the families of the kidnapped in Gaza, and I think I understand. I can't empathize, but I think I understand the extreme distress and the commitment. And it's my father, my mother, my sister, my brother. But those of us who aren't undergoing that stress, which I think distorts your thinking, one of the things we have in mind is you're now suffering because of what's happening to your family. But you don't want to trigger something that will do the same for other families, do you? Do you want to trigger an, at any price, exchange, which will give them another Sinwar, will be another head of Hamas, and engineer the destruction that he's engineered? I don't think in a balanced way you really want that. What you want is that it should be good for everybody. And not that be good for you should be at the cost of somebody else who has to suffer. I think that's one of the things that the government's taking into account. They've done in such a way, not like in the past, where we know that the people that we released come back and kill Jews. Over and over and over again. It's just brutally unfair to inflict on somebody else the pain that you're feeling and is driving you to do what you can for your relatives. So that's that part of it. The governments of the world, in this, Donald Trump got it right. Though they don't admit it, it's us first. And in a way, I think there has to be a certain sympathy for that. A government is responsible to its citizens. What they say, what they do, they have one thing in mind. Is it good for us or not? Can we expect that they should think about the abstract justice and so forth and so on? Only if their citizens care about justice. If their citizens care about justice, then they will be interested in justice because they want to be the power, especially if it's a democratic country. They have to be elected. So, if it's fortunate enough that their country has high values, then they will express those high values. And if they don't, they won't. In this respect, I want to address something which is also a very tricky subject. What should we think about someone who does something because he's been trained to think that way, educated to think that way? All the people who are his teachers and his examples do it that way, and it's dead wrong. Dead wrong. Can we really say that he's evil, that he's doing something? There has to be a certain point where you say that the person is not responsible for what he's doing because He didn't know any better, and maybe in practical terms, he couldn't know any better. Up until 150 years ago, doctors bled people when they had a fever. They were hurting them. Do we blame them? It was medical practice for thousands of years that that's what you do with people who have fevers. So the thought is maybe we shouldn't be so wholly, single-mindedly, 100% expressive of inherent evil. But then don't confuse that with absolute, uncompromising, destructive resistance. How do you feel about cancer cells? Are they guilty? Are they evil? Surely not. They're cells, but I want to destroy them. Yes, absolutely destroy them. And together with bacteria and viruses that cause human diseases and kill people, I want to destroy them. Not because I'm angry at them, not because I think they're evil, just because they're destroying me. The question of the individual guilt of each Hamasnik and all the rest of that, that's up to Kodesh Baruch Hu. But killing and destroying them, absolutely. Absolutely. Because they're out to kill and destroy us. And by the way, I want to insert a little footnote here because some of these things, I mean, as a philosopher, let's say you're interested in animal rights. Yeah, but the real progressives don't stop there. There are rights for trees also. There are rights for streams. You can't dam up a stream. It has a right to the free flowing of its water. You can't mine metals out of a mountain. The mountain has a right to integrity, integralness, undisturbed life, or undisturbed continued existence. Okay? I'm waiting for rights for bacteria. They're alive. Bacteria are alive. Who are you as a human being to put your life above their life? And there are billions of them in you, and you're killing them. Somehow I don't hear them taking that position that in this competition of life against life, that somehow we should feel guilty for killing bacteria or cancer cells. These people, this group, Hamas, is like a cancer. It's like a cancer. I just want to say one more thing. People have talked about they're doing it because of their religion and so forth and so on. And I think that that's dreadfully superficial. You can believe that Jews don't deserve a country. You can fight a war against them. But that isn't what they did. They practiced the most obscene, vicious, sadistic cruelty that was not coming from Islamic doctrine. That was coming from a much deeper level of their personality and their culture. And one of the proofs is that they do it to each other also. When Iran and Iraq fought a years-long war, they used poison gas on each other. That wasn't because they hate Jews or because Jews don't have no right. It's different types of Islam. It's a brutalness, a brutal viciousness that's deep-seated in the culture. You're not going to turn that around. Not without 20 years of re-education. Yeah, question.
The question is about the hostages situation. So the fact that Hamas has a lower level for human life than we do, so how does it play out? Because as you mentioned, Rob, in the Shalit deal, it was 1,000 for one soldier. So it's like, say one...
So I'll tell you how it plays out. 1,000 for one works like this. They talk about proportionality. This is a joke. They talk about proportionality. So if they kill one of us, we kill 1,000 of them. That's how it works out. That's their equation. Their equation is 1,000 of them for one of us. We accept the same equation. You kill one of us, we'll kill 1,000 of yours. Okay, that was a joke, but it's a joke with a point. That if we take them at their own valuation, they value themselves much less. They used it because, like Arafat said, we're going to win because you believe in life and we believe in death. That's why we're going to win. That and the Arab womb, he said. You won't match our reproductive thing, we'll swamp you with people. There's a certain truth in that. So this way, and this I think this was what they've been saying for the past couple of weeks, the more pressure they're under militarily, the more they'll compromise with the prisoner swap. And I think that's what you're seeing. 1 for 1? It was never 1 for 1. Not once was it 1 for 1. Why are they willing to do 1 for 1 now? Because they're under terrific pressure. They need a halt. They're being wiped out. So it's the pressure that's making them do it, not anything else. So it's not incompatible with going after the hostages to go after the militarily. It's not a distraction from the hostages. This is why I think that the complaint against the government, it's so bitter and accusatory. You've forgotten us, you don't care about us. The government doesn't care about Jewish hostages? Really? Is that what you really think? They don't care? Where are you coming from? What kind of people do you think they are? To me, it's like inconceivability. Something else is going on. A 1 for 1 is an entire. It's a gigantic step forward. So I think that now Ben Gvir, this is in the press. You know how the prisoners who were part of the October 7th action, you know how they're being held? There's 6 in a cell. They're always handcuffed. They sleep on metal beds. They have a hole in the middle of the cell for their needs. And 24 hours a day, they're playing Hatikva. Let them listen to Hatikva 24 hours a day. And he and others are working for the death penalty. A former attorney general said, according to Israeli law, death penalty for those terrorists is legal. So after having held them that way, they'll go in and shoot them. Certainly appropriate. It's too kind for them to shoot them. Final thing is what to do. I mean, you're here, Baruch Hashem. You're in a place where, at least here, you're protected. If you go back, it's a very tricky situation. There are groups that are enabling Jews to organize and to resist the pressure. I'm not 21. I'm not subjected to that pressure. I can't think myself into that position. But it seems to me, for your own safety and for your own mental health, that's the way to go. Not alone, but to join a group, whether it means to learn how to defend yourself and to be ready to defend yourself. These people are cowards. They're cowards. They're not brave people. That's why they threaten. They yell instead of. And any group, even a small group, who will stand their ground, they'll back down. That's what I believe. But at least if you know that you have people, and you have people that will stand together, that way you know what you stand for. You know that you stand for something that's right, and you know that you defended it. I'm not telling you to put yourself in a dangerous way, but I don't think it will be dangerous. People will have to make judgment about that. I know that 40 years ago in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, there was a famous cry, chapsim. When a non-Jew would attack a Jew, someone would yell, and the buildings would pour out with people. And they didn't do it again, because by the time police arrived, they took him to the hospital. So that definitely worked. I know of a case where a guy was coming home Friday afternoon on the train in Brooklyn, and he got close to Shabbos, and he saw a non-Jew who lived near where he lives, and he said to him, "Listen, it's coming to Shabbos. I can't carry. I have my wallet, my money, and so on. I'm asking you to do me a favor. Walk behind me, take it, and just drop it in my house." He said, "Rabbi, walk behind you in the street? Not me. Someone's going to yell chapsim. I'm going to be in the hospital. I'm not doing that." So there's no reason why Jews can't defend themselves, and let the mob know that you're not walking away. I think that's a practical thing to do. If you have enough Jews, we'll do it together. Other than that, certainly don't let the leftist crowd demoralize you. I don't know if you use social media. Don't use social media. You're probably much better off without the social media. But don't let the incoming messages demoralize you in any way. I had a friend. I was growing up. I was an intellectual. We had a small group, and we were social outcasts. And I asked a friend of mine, when people make fun, call you names and so on and so on, or criticize you, what do you do? So he told me the following thing. He said, look, I asked myself first, does this person who's yelling at me, does he know anything? Does he have any understanding? Is he an intelligent person? So I stop and think, I'll listen to him and see, maybe there's something like that I can prove. And then if I find that there's nothing there, then to me, he's a dog barking. Would you be upset if a dog barked at you? Would you feel somehow victimized, or would you feel somehow inferior if a dog barked at you? He's a barking dog. That's all he is. So you have to realize that these people whose whole self-expression is barking. That's all they can do. They can yell. That's their pseudo-power, to make up for the fact that they know that they're powerless and they're incompetent and they have no abilities. But they can yell. At that point, you should simply say, "I don't have to pay any attention, no matter how many messages you get on your social account. It should be like water off a duck's back. Just disregard it. It's the thumping of the raindrops on the roof. That's all it is." Nakadosh Baruch Hu should have rachamim on us. Should protect us, and that we should keep our focus on Kvod Shamayim. What will add to the honor of Kadosh Baruch Hu in the world, add to the honor of Torah in the world, add to the honor of the Jewish people as representatives of Torah in the world? That's what we have to daven for, that's what we have to hope for, and that's what we have to work for.